I'm here to introduce the DVD or video or whatever. It shows you my generation. I wasn't sure whether to call it a video or not. It's called Survival, Strength, and Sisterhood. And I'm supposed to make sure that you know what it's important for. And the only thing that comes to mind is the word survival, sisterhood, and strength. Because of all of those components, that's why it's important. And that's why every one of you, one way or another, recognizes your own qualities. Because that's what the downtown Eastside has done to everyone. It's forced them to recognize that they have that survival, strength, and the sisterhood by everybody working together. And that's what makes the Power of Women so incredibly special, is that women have been able to come together and overcome generations of non-voice, to regain that voice. And in speaking out and speaking from the heart, one gains that strength and one gains that sisterhood. And in that, we collectively survive. So that's the importance of this this DVD. Historically, there's a little bit of history on it. There's all kinds of everything else. But the most important thing is that it's not a downer. It's to lift up spirits, and that's what makes the downtown Eastside such an important place, because it may have poverty. I mean, really, it's the poorest, non-reserved coastal code in the country, and yet it has one of the highest rates of art galleries per capita. So it says something about creativity and impoverishment. And when it comes right down to it, poverty is a state of mind. And what we've discovered is that we might be poor materially, but spiritually we're extremely rich. And that's what the downtown Eastside has taught us. And because, in a sense, it's a war, and it's a war on women over generations. And what we find is that we're carriers of medals of honor. And the medals of honor are attuning ourselves to our own purpose. And that's attuning yourself to your own purpose is learning to speak your voice and to live with it. Because at 3 o'clock in the morning, the only person that's going to be looking at you is yourself in a mirror, and you have to be feeling comfortable about that. So for all of those women here, thank you very much, because you yourself are a measure of survival, strength, and sisterhood, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be here. Thank you very much. Enjoy the film. Of deep violence or deep peace. And the Power of Women have moved from the prisoners of war, where there's a great deal of anger and are in the process of that, to the Power of Women, which is being able to speak one's anger and turn it into something that's constructive. And we work so that we can help each other and future generations live in peace. And so I just wanted to, I brought a couple of things to say. The DVD, if you're interested in buying one, is $20, and we've got some here. And as you've already seen, you can get it over on the internet. The reason why we're selling it is because we don't get funded. What was it we did one time? We we went and protested and sat in somebody's office and lost funding. So now we use creative fundraising activities. You'll find on your seats when you've sat down that that there are a number of papers, and we ask that you read them. One of them is an article that was that's appeared on Google, that B was interviewed, and I was interviewed, and Harsha was interviewed, and it's appeared on a rather prominent website now. And there's some statistics as well of the downtown Eastside. It was actually for last year, because of the 20 Olympics. But basically, it's the same kinds of things that we still have. It's probably even more so than before. And again, we'd appreciate it if you would read the articles so we don't have to take them back to Vancouver. But if you have any questions, please ask and we will try and answer them. So, Karen, do you want to come up? And Charlene and Pat, what happened to you? Oh, okay. Have I finished my thing now? I'll let...
Stay up there.
Notice how I was in the photo, but there wasn't very much said because I do a lot of standing around. So if you have any questions. Do you want to say something first, Karen and Charlene?
I can if you want.
Okay.
I moved to downtown after retiring, after having lost about 4 or 5 close friends in about a 5-month period. And I just decided it wasn't worthwhile to knock myself out working for the rest of my life with my illnesses and things I had for 30 some odd years. I've had a problem with chronic pain and whatnot. So I took early retirement at 60 and went on CBB. And I've learned to live on virtually nothing. But I found it very welcoming moving downtown and being involved with the group here. And I'm sorry, being involved with the group here and being a part of a women's group has been just totally exciting. But basically, I'd like to myself speak about the welfare system and police violence. I have a little article here that I wrote for the Carnegie newspaper. It's about the block I live in, and it gives you an idea of what I mean by police violence and the way people are treated down there. I call it the Kingdom of Hastings in Maine. Here in the Kingdom of Hastings in Maine, where I live, unlike other neighborhoods in Vancouver, I have found there is a hierarchy in place and it is very defined. We have many factions and groups that compete for wealth and control this land. It starts with Castle City Hall, which is led by King Gregor Robertson and his cronies. King Gregor had many lords and serfs. He also has many advisors to help control and tax his subjects. The king's land covers many areas and territory. He carefully takes good care of the lords that live in areas like Point Grey, Carousel, and Shaughnessy. With the help of his lords, many who are lawyers, real estate people, and property developers, the king plans his ways to control areas like our Kingdom of Hastings in Maine. The king has a large army to squash uprisings or protests from us serfs. They are called the VPD, Vancouver Police Department. And the king changes any laws he feels are required for his army to do his bidding. The king uses his lords and advisors to plan his strategies to increase property values, to enable more taxes and larger numbers of subjects to fill coffers. He is a wise king, so his lords develop and profit by these actions and thus stay loyal to him. His lords know that the poor serfs like myself are starting to rebel. Because of this, so to quell our anger, they have used gentrification to show the king's concern for us serfs. It is bad enough that we serfs have to combat this erosion of affordable housing and services, but there are other groups that feed upon us. This group is the drug dealers and such that control our kingdom's pathways. This evil group conspires to bring further hardship to us serfs. They get many people hooked on the poisonous goods that they offer. I have noticed that every check day, the dealers are placed in front of the cashing stores and banks where the serfs cash our checks. This group collects their pound of flesh from many poor that have succumbed to the lifestyle of drugs to help them overcome the hopelessness of living in poverty. Now the king tells us we are protected by his army. But I believe that his army is corrupt. How else can we explain that month after month, year in and year out, I see the same evil faces continuing to exploit us with only the occasional show of action by the VPD? Could it be the king's soldiers are being pieced off by the group of dealers, or is it easier to make arrest numbers inflated by charging the women that hold drugs and money for these dealers? And that's an observation of what I see in the We had a not too long ago, we had a young woman with, I believe she had cerebral palsy, didn't she? That that was actually pushed down by a police officer because she walked funny and
It's on the news.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And our group protested and went to the police station, held a protest, because they didn't even take the officer out of that area after that. And the next day they announced that they were removing him from his beat. But there's things like that happen constantly. I'd like to give you one more example of police violence and intimidation and the way they act upon us poor people. I have had a very good friend, and I say had because she passed away early April. She was a hooker at one point, and still I think she did some, and she was a drug addict. I tried to help her steer away from that life by supporting her quite a bit, but unfortunately was not able to. I was assaulted about a year ago by someone who was beating her up because I went out and stood in between because she was a very small lady. And he has both assaulted me and threatened to kill me. Now, what the courts did is they gave him 1 year probation.
Big deal.
Yeah. And the building I live in allowed the man to move back in, to stay in the building, even though he had a court order saying that he wasn't supposed to be in that block. So, you know, they don't follow the laws anyway, and they allow it to happen.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. But I lost her in April. She had been spiraling down. I could not help her any, and she'd gotten really heavily into drugs again. And I believe, as best I can tell, that one of her friends who was doing drugs with her, she probably got some bad drugs, and they found her in her room. They don't know exactly what day she died, but she passed away. I think part of that happened was she had been so devastated, concerned about the fact that 3 weeks earlier she had been raped by a fella. I don't want to put race or color into this, but she'd been raped by this fella, and because of her past as a hooker and a drug user, even though he had been noted as being involved in these kind of situations before, Crown Counsel did not lay any charges.
Oh my God.
So there again, because of the poverty and where we live, I felt justice was not done, and I don't know how much this weighed upon her, and whether this is what helped her to push her over the edge and just come to her misery or not, but that's one of the many reasons I fight very hard for us down here. And it's an ongoing issue. The drug dealers, the gentrification, finding a suitable doctor down there is very hard when you're poor, because the doctors down there, a lot of them just want to feed you full of medications, you know. They don't want to handle what actually your issues are. I found that through my volunteering at the Women's Center and my involvement in the community and with this group has given me a new value of self-worth and esteem. Being that I can take care of myself better and have learned about resources and have found places that I can purchase foods at a reasonable price to cook, I've been able to improve my diet and my own lifestyle. But now I would like to give back to the community and try to do the same for them. I'm very blessed because I don't do drugs. The other thing I would like to tell you about is the welfare system. It's very skewed.
You think?
Housing. I'll read you, I go to UBC. I take humanities. I took writing this year. And I had published in the Capilano Review an article, manifesto of what we want. And it was also used at the WE exhibit, the Vancouver Art Gallery. And we have many manifestos that people down there wrote. I'll just read you the one short one that I helped write. and it gives you an idea of what we're facing down there. In this 21st century, we should be able to care for people, putting them in safe, affordable housing that meets their needs, etc. People with drug issues should have in-building help with medications and related treatments. People with handicaps require a building with proper access for their handicaps, physical and mental. All should have both safe and secure housing without intrusions in personal property or privacy, unless there is a just cause. All housing should be kept in reasonable repair, and infestations of bugs, mice, insects, etc. must be taken care of to a maximum standard. Maintenance needs to be done on windows, heating, painting, and drywalling, toilet and bathing facilities, and kitchen facilities. Housing should be affordable for low-income people, which suits individual needs. Proper maintenance, cleanliness, and individual privacy is a must. Secure buildings are needed, with security provided for tenant safety. We as the residents of downtown Eastside, Vancouver, are a very mixed population of people of all races and incomes, some with health issues, both physical and mental. We should be given respect, and there should be care for the needs of each individual case or person. I, for one, am pissed off at the seeming lack of care and respect that is received from government agencies. We deserve and demand that the city and provincial agencies start to give us proper housing based on individual needs and requirement. I want the police to treat us with more respect and not goddamn abuse and bullshit. I want access to services for medical and health-related issues, and for this to be done with long-term goals for all to be able to live life in a reasonable manner. In response to what I want to say about the welfare system, it's an adversarial system. Anyone who thinks they're going to go and find their way through without some help is in dire needs of changing their thinking, because it goes back to what my father always said. Figures never lie, but liars figure. And they figure a way to exclude you from what you deserve. And we all have to work together to change that. Thank you very much.
I'll go now. You want to go now? Okay, my name's Karen. I hope everybody can hear me. I've been living in the downtown east side for about 11 years now. And I used to live out in Surrey, and ran into some trouble out there, and I ended up in the downtown east side. I didn't know anybody really until I found the women's center and that, and I didn't trust anybody. I wouldn't even talk to anybody, right? I still don't let half out, right? I still keep a lot in. But since I joined the Power to Women's group, I found it very interesting. I've been with it for quite a while. Sometimes I take a break from it, but the things the Power to Women's group does is amazing stuff. We did a tent city, right? And that was a lot of fun, eh? We took over one in the parking lot, vacant parking lots that the Olympic people owned. Who was it? Van Ott? Right? And we stayed there, right, until the Olympics were over. We had media from all over the world. That was amazing. And another thing we did was police down there, right, were harassing everybody, right, selling their stuff, right, ticketing everybody. And so what we did, we got a bunch of stuff, and we set up a little thing in front of the Vancouver police station and sold everything, sold our stuff, right? Our cops were too scared to come out and talk to us. Another one we did, we marched up to BC Housing on the terminal, and they wouldn't even let us in. So we were standing there, right? telling them to come down, and no, they wouldn't even talk to us, right? They had the doors shut and cops standing inside and outside, right? It was pretty good too. I liked that one. Another one they did was they challenged the politicians to a house swap,
That's a good idea.
right? But none of them would take us up on it, right? So I'm pretty proud of what we do down there, right? And it really gave me a voice to do things, right? I could never talk in front of a crowd before, but now I'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored to be here, over here doing this. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Pat. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your hospitality, for having us here, and we had a good night last night. I've been a Power to Women group member for about 2 or 3 years, I suppose. About 5 years ago, I was homeless, and I'd gotten tired of trying to find some place to live, and I ended up living what they call couch surfing on my brother's couch for about 3 months until I got into the building I'm in now. In retrospect, compared to a lot of people who end up in shelters and things, I was very lucky. I managed to bypass some of that and get into the space that I am in now. But after it happened and I got my stuff out of storage, I cried. And I thought, never again would I do this. Because for myself, it was too devastating. And I was really oblivious to the issues that were in the area at the time until I was involved in it. It happened to me. And unfortunately, like most people, you know, we can hear things on the news happening in Iran, or somebody's getting killed, or some major person, and we can listen to it, but the effect is not directly upon us, not at that time. Not until it happens to somebody are they likely to really understand all the repercussions that go along with it. Being homeless doesn't end when you get housed. If you've been homeless for any length of time, months, you can have health issues going along with that. B, for instance, had been in a shelter, I think, for 8 months and ended up in the hospital, and just recently got out, was in there for about 2 months because of cold weather extremes and different things that happen to people from being homeless for long lengths of time. The other thing that comes into play is this hoarding, you know, and I thought, why is this happening? I became this, and I thought, I was devastated with all the psychological things that go along with it, as well as just the physical. It's a huge thing. In fact, I believe there's even an issue on TV now called Hoarding, Buried Alive. So these things are happening. They're not just happening to us. They're happening everywhere. And I always say, when something gets into print, it's not going anywhere for any length of time. Another part of the homeless, what I call the faces of homelessness, is storage. If you've got your belongings, and myself, it cost me about $300 from when I put it in to when I got my stuff out. And so I'm not the only person this has happened to. We're talking about a lot of money here, and my opinion is that if the government is not going to house people, and people are homeless for lengths of time, there should be a free storage area for them to keep their belongings free of charge, so they don't got that added, you know, pressure and worry and stress upon them as well. I was homeless, jobless, I had health issues, and there's no way I could go around. I was going around in a circle looking for work and in pain and worrying about whether I was going to have some place to live. So I'm not the only person this has happened to. Those are just very concentrated, short examples of these issues. And the government or someone needs to take responsibility here and let people know that there's, you know, something for them in their future. If you ever go into the downtown Eastside and you see people pushing their shopping carts along with everything they own in them, while chances are they're homeless or they live in a shelter, and the shelter hours are restricted. You know, you have to come in at a certain time and you have to be out at a certain time. And you know, it means all day long you get accomplish what you can do during that day. You don't have the freedom to come home at midnight if you want to, if that's what you want to do. You've got to be in the doors by 9 o'clock, some of these shelters. We also sat in, a number of the Power to Women groups sat in the China Towers talks that happened just about a month or so back. I was there for about 4 of these talks, and in all there were about 140 speakers. Joan was one, I was one. I think, were you, Shirley?
No, I wasn't.
No. But Ivan Drury, when you were talking about the person who had said there were only a handful of people who didn't want the condos in the area, was the person who mentioned it in the Carnegie newsletter. He's also part of the DNC, which I'm part of as well. It's kind of a housing activism sort of area group. And out of all those speakers, there were about 6 business people who were in favor of it. So through all that and listening to the speakers and watching the councillors' reactions and all, it often feels as though you're a very tiny speck, you know, or a very, you know, small spoke in the wheel, because you don't feel as though you're accomplishing what you do. But the Power to Women group has given us an obstacle, and we've tackled that obstacle, and we've put action behind our words and and what the problem and the issue has been, and we have gone forth, and I have to say I've never belonged to anything that has not accomplished so much in so little. We also sat in, well, we went to Christy Clark's office a few days back and had our Power to Women poster out there, and we had a couple of people who talked to us and were, you know, saying, well, if you want to do some good for Christy Clark, go in there and get on the phones. I says, we're not here to vote Christy Clark into office. We're here because we want to demand to have a women's shelter open all year round. And thank you. Out of that meeting, right away, we had 2,000 signatures we brought in from people in the downtown Eastside and business people and so on, and presented them to her. And out of that came our meeting with the Minister of Housing and his other suit. I don't remember his name. He came and we talked with them. And they are very concerned. He is very, very well informed, this man, of all the issues and things in the area and the housing that's going on in that area. He is looking into the budget to try and get a women's only drop-in shelter year-round. Because these shelters, when they close, you know, that doesn't mean the homeless don't have some place to go again. You know, it's where do they do in the summertime, you know? I mean, yes, the weather's better, but that doesn't mean you still have to have somewhere to live. So these are all issues that have come out of it. I have met and I've talked with Libby Davies, and she's a very personable lady. She talked about her Bill 304, and I don't know if any of you were down in Maine and Hastings, or Hastings and Maine. And she did her hunger strike for a week to help people understand the importance of housing. Her Bill 304 has gone through the first stages, but it's unfortunate. I don't know a lot about politics, but I am learning. And unfortunately, what happens now after this election, whenever there's an election, that bill will now get thrown right back to stage 1. They have a list of issues, and they pick 30 and they run with those. And so we are now talking about Bill 304 sitting in somewhere again to go through these stages again. And it's quite a process. But I believe in Libby Davies. I think she's trying to do her best for an issue that's huge. And yeah, I guess that's everything. Thank you very much for having us.
Do you have any questions at all? One thing that I'd really like to note is that when we were down, when we were doing the tent village last year, which was an anti-Olympic thing, the reason why it was basically set up, and the Power of Women was instrumental in organizing it and monitoring it, was that there were a group of anti-Olympic activists who basically made sure that when they found a site, which eventually became the tent city, that it was safe. It was totally safe, and that the safety was safety from the police themselves, and people were allowed to come and to stay whenever they wanted to. And in so doing, it was really interesting that these people, many of them, I've got 5 minutes left, that's the reason why.
I was just told to tell you.
Right. Many of them basically, a number of them had been homeless for quite some number of years. A number of them had mental health issues, which is something that I can personally attest to, because that's how I ended up on the downtown east side myself. But the thing about that was that when you took these people and when they felt that they were safe, they were able to make up their own rules on a daily basis and then come to a meeting the next day and decide on whether to continue that set of rules or to adapt. And it was amazing. These people who were quote-unquote rejects from society could live peacefully for a 2-week period, and even longer for another 2 weeks. We were involved for a 2-week period, and in that 2-week period, we were able to get 40 people homes. A number of those people had been homeless for a number of years, and then there was a continuation, and another 40 were given homes. So by the end of the month, there was about 82 people that got homes. And it sort of blew my mind. It was like they don't have homes, and all of a sudden they were able to come up with 40, and then another 40 2 weeks later. That was really mind-boggling. But the most prominent thing that I found was that you brought this group of people who collectively were considered to be unacceptable to society, and were hassled by the police on a daily basis with jaywalking tickets, all kinds of different things. But when they were put into very safe situations from the police, all of a sudden their humanity came out. Gardens started to literally be planted. It's still there in the vacant lot, the little garden plot. And at the same time, they started putting up shelters. They had tents, they shared with each other, food appeared. People from Vancouver, the West Side, UBC, all of those people came down bringing clothes, saying, this is really, really important, we're here to support you. And it was amazing what kind of community came out of it. And to me, that's what real social justice is all about. And that's what we can thank Harsha for, because it was Harsha in her ability to be able to facilitate and to see the humanity in each one of us, and to take the silence and move that, somehow intuitively know to move that silence into a voice, and a voice that spoke beyond anger into community and to that with resolution, so that there was and is a richness in spirit. So we may be poor, and it is true, we're learning very creative ways of being able to live on nothing. But in spirit, we're billionaires. So on that basis, we thank you very much for inviting us. All of you well, and good success in your conference this weekend. Thank you so very much again for your attention and your kindness, and your humanity especially, because that's what brought you out to begin with. And from my vantage point of being 62, to see such young people, some of our generation did the right thing.
I was going to say, I can't ask a question because I'm from your group. But the thing that I myself am very worried about, that we pay a lot of attention to shelterless people out there on the street. We talk a lot about that. But what about people who have a roof but might lose it at any time? And being in subsidized housing is no guarantee that they won't be victimized and evicted. I can tell you that one of my neighbors on my floor told me a few days ago, you know what happened? The police came to his door and said, "Do you have a grow-up?" He said, "No." And they said, they forced their way in and said, "Well, then we'll find out the tough way." And they searched his whole place without a warrant. So remember that you're not safe in your own home either when you're in poverty. Please remember.
She's got one too.
Well, it's true. It's belonging ours. You know, it's wrong. You know, and we can't look at it in any other way. You know, and to replace some of those things, if you've got no job, if you've got no idea, it's virtually impossible. Which is why the Women's Center provides a lot of. It provides a daily lunch for women. It has their programs. It has a meal each time. It has clothing there for people who need it. These are all vital services that are very much needed in that area.
If you have any other questions, you can talk to Pat.
13th?
May
14th.
May 14th. Is that Saturday or Sunday?
Sunday the 15th.
Okay, so it's May 15th, Sunday, May 15th, 2011, Victoria, BC. This is footage of a cop car with